Recording in progress.
Welcome in to the Matchday 1 Europa League episode. I'm your host, the real_G Warner. I will be going through each match and each potential wager opportunity on every single Europa League matchup on this podcast. We'll be coming out with a best bet end of show, an ultimate best bet, I might even call it. And that way you can grade this podcast, the Europa League episode 1, Matchday 1 version, to make sure that I'm producing what you're looking for. You can follow me on Twitter, the real_G Warner, also the same on YouTube and on Instagram, which is where the 1-minute version of this episode with just the ultimate best bet will come later in the show. And if you are not subscribed on Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/the real_G Warner. I have enabled comments. Hopefully anyone that's watching this live can throw something in there. We are recording this live on the match day, as I did 2 college football and an NFL pro football podcast, American football, that is, podcast yesterday. But, the Europa League is starting on Wednesday this year, so it's time to get into it. So without further ado, let's actually get into it. So I'll start where the money is. Just kidding. Everything is in the same little bracket here. But the first matchup I'll go with is Bodo Glimt hosting Football Club Porto from Portugal. And this is a pretty good matchup. I don't know that Bodo Glimt is known very well to the major footballing world. You could almost say that about Porto as well. But their success in Champions League, I think, for example, probably puts them on the radar. And ultimately, I think makes them a favorite here as a -1/2 favorite away from home. A little bit more juice on Porto away from home. Over under here is 2 3/4, and that is juiced pretty heavily to over. So my thoughts on this matchup. So Bodo Glimt, they're from a smaller league. I want to say they're Norwegian. Let's see. Bodo Glimt are from, I should know this, but I don't. They are Norwegian. So I did know that. Thank you. Good job by me. Regardless, they are in this competition, have basically been in some sort of qualification process, either in I think in Champions League qualifying this year that failed, but dropped down in the Europa League. Not a bad situation for them whatsoever, but I'm sure they definitely wanted more. With that said, they're a good team. They are probably more aggressive at home. Same little Swiss style setup where the top 8 teams advance automatically. I think 9 through 16 will end up getting into a playoff position, and then everyone below is eliminated, does not drop down to Europa Conference League. So how I think that has changed, at least after watching a match day of Champions League, not entirely, but I do think teams are going for wins more, and it feels more like a domestic campaign than Champions League, which is a lot more defensive and honestly a lot more profitable for me in the past. So I think picking my spots, your spots, is probably a little bit more useful in this competition, just because unfortunately I feel like there's going to be a lot more scoring, which is certainly something to think about as we move forward in this competition. With that said, so I'm very interested in the home underdog here. I don't know necessarily that Porto are going to go have a dominant win away in Norway. Long trip from Portugal to Norway, I guess not by American standards or United States standards, but that is what it is, I guess. So I'll put Bodo Glimt on my list at getting a half of a goal. Match starts in about an hour, so we'll try to get this podcast wrapped up pretty quickly. And then, though I think there's only 16 matches, so it shouldn't be too bad. And then looking at under 2 3/4 as well. Just Porto as a road favorite, I feel like plays an aggressive style for Portuguese Liga teams or La Liga Portugal. But ultimately, I think are going to be a lot more conservative than a big road favorite should be. Moving next to the other match in the early window, we have AZ Alkmaar from the Netherlands. They're hosting Elfsborg. Currently, Alkmaar, AZ, a 1-goal favorite at home with all the juice. Over unders 2 3/4. She's very heavily all the way to over. So it looks like we might see this one hit 3, might see it hit 1 1/4, which is a big price for Elfsborg, but they were pretty big underdogs in a lot of the qualifying, I think, for this competition, which they were able to get through. That's not really a great sign for me. I'm trying to I would love to watch Elfsborg and learn a little bit more about them, but for now, I think I'm willing to look the other way or move to the next game. Ludogorets then host Slavia Prague. They are Ludogorets, a half a goal underdog at home. Over under is 2 1/4, and it's juiced pretty heavily to over. Ludogorets look like a pretty good squad in qualifying, but this is a really tough matchup for them. Slavia Prague, I saw them last year live, where we got the scarf behind me on at a Roma match, lost 2-0, but we're competitive. And I thought away from home, we're very pragmatic, certainly against a side like Roma on the road. And that facing that fan base at the Stadio Olimpico is a lot different than potentially seeing a Ludogorets side. But at the same time, I think Slavia Prague, they still have that same type of mentality, which I think is a defensive one. So certainly they could turn that off or turn that on, depending on how this will work in this matchup. As a away favorite, I imagine they will be a lot more aggressive. And in terms of movement on this matchup, it looks like we've seen some money come in on Slavia Prague, as they were even money initially as a half of a goal favorite. Totals got bet down from 2.5 to 2.25. And I think I agree with that move. My biggest interest in this matchup is, I guess, backing the home team a little bit, but Ludogorets under 2.25 goals. More so than the side. I think I like the under there. Moving next to Dynamo Kyiv hosting Lazio in a, I don't think any matches are being played in the Ukraine. Unfortunately, geopolitics gets in the way of football at times or often. Dynamo Kyiv, a 1/4 goal underdog at home with almost all the juice. Over-unders 2.25. Juice is split both ways in that one, so no real indicator where that one will move later in today's, I guess, onslaught of matches, all starting at 3 p.m. Eastern time and 2 p.m. in Texas, where I am recording out of Dallas. Dynamo Kyiv, they're a feeder team, it feels like. Them, Shakhtar Donetsk as well, have great talent. The Ukrainian under-21s and just younger teams are very good. But it's a weird scenario, not playing any games at home. Therefore, I feel like they're overvalued, only getting 1/4 goal at home in this faux home environment from Lazio. Lazio, I think, are a really strong team. They didn't do very well on Sunday at Fiorentina, but tough road trip there, of course, and an early matchup in Serie A. And I think will give them the maximum amount of time and rest for this matchup possible for a Wednesday start. I don't know that there's a lot I want to do here. I feel like the total is short, 2.25 at Joe Dollar. I'm sure we'll love potentially me talking about this one looking like an overlean to me. I just feel like the total is smaller than I made it. A lot smaller, half of a goal, that is. It's been bet down from 2.5 to 2.25. So that is certainly the betting markets taking a sort of a position on this one. But my biggest interest in this one, I know, very surprised to anyone that could hear this. And I'm not really an over player, but it's to over 2.25. Moving next to Galatasaray hosting PAOK from, I want to say, Greece. And PAOK were really good last year, no matter where they're from. Galatasaray, though, will certainly test that with the Turkish home crowds being one of the most difficult in the world to deal with, as I think anyone who follows soccer internationally will certainly know. But Galatasaray, 1-goal favorite. So giving a full goal of insurance to PAOK. Over-under is 3.25. Juice very heavily to under, and we have a lot more juice on the PAOK side. So the Turkish clubs, basically, my takeaway from them playing on the international stage, continental stage, is that they just haven't been great defensively. That does put a total in jeopardy, though above 3, I think, is usually a pretty key number in this sport. I also think PAOK will go on the road and be very, very defensive in nature. So I like that goal of insurance. I also like under 3.25 in that matchup. Moving next to Olympic Gymnastique Club de Nice. They are hosting Real Sociedad. Currently, Nice a 1/4 goal favorite with all the juice on Real Sociedad, that's come down from a -135 at BetOnline. If you're not a member at BetOnline or SportsBetting.ag, please use the links in the podcast descriptions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. You can click a link, sign up, make your first deposit of, I think, at least $500, and they will match it and double it at certain places, or match it at sports betting. I think they'll give you even the 1-for-1 at BetOnline. So go make sure you do that. 100% bonus is a big deal. Use the casino's money against them. And I think I have that all defined in the podcast description. So go sign up there. So again, Real Sociedad a 1/4 goal underdog, though all the juice on their side. Over-under is 2, and we're juiced very high to over. Maybe as a result, I mean, it's still a very low total, but Nice had a dominant victory, 6-0 in the first half against Saint Etienne on Friday. Real Sociedad played the early matchup on Saturday and scored no goals. So two teams going in opposite directions, you could say, but I think Nice were very fortunate, had an own goal, a worldie, and then it looked like Saint Etienne, a newly promoted Ligue 1 giant who had been in the Ligue 2 before that, really kind of fell apart. Nice, I still don't really trust their offense. They've been missing Tano Mofi for a lot of the season, and really just don't think that they're much more than a defensive side. has had some issues there, including a late loss to Alger earlier this season. But Real Sociedad on the other side cannot score goals. And I do think Real Sociedad go on the road and possess the ball a lot. That's kind of what they've been known to do. They can't really score goals. There's a lot of pressure on Iman Aguafil, their manager. I hope that he keeps his job because he's done a great job, but especially over the years, and has taken this club to new heights. But it does feel like Real Sociedad believe that they are a Champions League side, and they have not played like it for really ever since they got knocked out of the group stage or knocked out of, the knockout rounds after they won the group stage in a group with Inter Milan last season. But my biggest interest here, I do like the side a little bit, though it's very juiced. Real Sociedad getting a quarter of a goal. I like under 2, and I'm very interested in that one as Real Sociedad, just the team, especially push on 2 is not a lot, especially in a European continental competition. They're usually skewed totals higher. And as I said earlier, Nice are going to want to win this matchup to try to find a way into those top 8. But this is one of their toughest matchups. And I feel like a 1-1 draw might be a maximum output here. Moving next to Michelin hosting TSG Hoffenheim. Currently Michelin a pick'em with all the juice right now. Over under 3.25. Juice more to the over. And this has actually been moving a little bit as Hoffenheim were a quarter goal underdog last I had looked. I think they were. And now have fallen to pick'em. And I think that's a result of some headlines or just some belief in a German Bundesliga side being a lot bigger than a Danish Michelin one. But at the same time, TSG Hoffenheim have been horrible away from home in the Bundesliga and haven't had other competitions to really display anything else. Hoffenheim's defense has been pretty bad. Got off to a really poor start against FC Union Berlin on Saturday, unable to clear the ball on the first 2 goals. And I got to say, I think Michelin are a good small minnow, if you will, but have some history to them, have been in these competitions for a long time. So I don't know if there's much for me to do with this one. Hoffenheim, I'm tempted by under 3.25 because it's bigger than 3, as that's generally a key number, as I just said, probably one match ago. But ultimately, I think TSG Hoffenheim have to prove it. And I think that they somehow can defend Bayern really well, but can't really do it for a lot of the rest of the German Bundesliga. Moving next to Anderlecht hosting Ferencváros. Anderlecht from Belgium, a quarter goal favorite to the visiting Hungarians. Hungaria. Looks like almost all the juices on Ferencváros on the road. Over under 2.5. Juice pretty heavily to under. Ferencváros have always looked like a very defensive side when I've watched them. I will admit I don't watch the Budapest side too often, but certainly try to get to them in this competition. Anderlecht, they'd spent a lot of money on rebuilding their squad. I think they brought in Vertonghen of Belgian fame, of course, and former Tottenham Hotspur player. I'm a little bit out of touch on where they are, and certainly we'll be using the next few hours to research this matchup. But I think my biggest interest in this one is to back the Hungarians to play another defensive type of brand of football and to look to under 2.5 in that matchup. And I guess for the ultimate best bet, I'll do one from Wednesday and then one from Thursday, and then pick my favorite of the 2. Manchester United then hosts Twente, a Dutch side in the last matchup on Wednesday on this list. Currently, Manchester United 1.75 goal favorite with the juice split both ways. Over under is 3.25, and it's juice more to the over. I don't know where overs come from with Manchester United. Certainly, Twente are maybe not the most difficult of sides to come in there. Certainly not very well known, as I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right when I say Twente. But at this point, Manchester United, I just don't believe in their offense. Their defense is probably going to not be threatened as much in this matchup, which is great for them. My biggest interest in this matchup is certainly in that under 3.25. It would certainly be backing a visiting side in Old Trafford, possibly just staring at the lights and wilting under pressure. But I just don't think there's that much pressure coming from Manchester United at this point. So at this point, I'm looking to bet against them as much as possible, and especially against any sort of expectations on their offense. So for my best bet from Wednesday, I'm going to stay a little bit, I guess, off the beaten path, maybe, if you will. But I'll go with that Nice and Real Sociedad under 2, as that's my biggest interest in that one. I think it's going to be very hard to see goals in that matchup, and I've been kind of eyeing that one since I was looking at these numbers a couple days ago this week. Moving to Thursday, and before we get there, if you haven't left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, it's huge for the search ranking. So if you could do that, that'd be huge. Also want to make sure I shout out our other podcasts on this network. I do a college football and Major League Baseball podcast with Big East Ben and Munaf Manji at Sports Nerd 824 on the pregame.com network, but also doing podcasts on the NFL with @A_Schnicker. We've been on a huge run, 4-0 last 4. We were 17-7 our last 24 for I think a 73%. We've been great. We're trying to keep that going as much as possible, of course. And of course, we appreciate all the support. Yeah, 71%, excuse me, as I looked that up on the side to make sure I didn't misquote. But yeah, 17-7, not too bad. We had a really good playoffs run and have won 5 of our 6 best bets this season. No new best bet 5-star reviews to read, but if you write something in there, I will certainly read it. Or if it's relevant to one of the other podcasts on this network, we'll have the Need for Seeds college basketball coming back with that at Big East Bend coming later. Thank you for the support there. And now I'll stop plugging it and get into the Thursday cards. We have Malmo hosting Rangers. Currently Malmo of Sweden, I think. They're a quarter goal favorite with all the juice on Rangers right now. Over under is 2.5. It's just pretty heavily to under. Let's see where Malmo is from. I'm going to say Sweden. They are from Sweden. There we go. I'm just so hot today with the Scandinavian clubs. Maybe because I am Scandinavian. 9% Viking, I think. Oh, anyway, Malmo, a quarter goal favorite, feels a little bit expensive just because Rangers are always getting a ton of respect from the marketplace. They're one of the most popular clubs in Scotland, of course, and probably the most popular. I mean, don't get mad at me, Celtic fans, but ultimately, I think that's going to skew the numbers here. There's probably not a lot of money coming in on Malmo. For that reason, I'll be waiting to see if they fall to pick them. I don't think that'll happen, and lean to under 2.5, as I just feel like Rangers have been decent on the continental stage, but I don't know if it's really that believable. So I'll go Rangers under 2.5 in that matchup. And these are the 2 early matchups. We'll go next to Fenerbahce hosting Union Saint-Gilloise. We have Fenerbahce from Turkey and Union Saint-Gilloise from Belgium. Fenerbahce, 3/4 goal favorite right now with all the juice. Over unders 2.5, juice all the way to over. And that's like, I think, going along the Turkish theme, Turkish delight, if you will. Not a ton of defense. And Union Saint-Gilloise lost their manager to St. Pauli in Germany in the Bundesliga this season after their St. Pauli's manager left for Brighton. But seems like a funnel. We saw Boniface leave Union Saint-Gilloise to go to Leverkusen and score a ton of goals. I'm a believer in their youth system and kind of how they develop players. Haven't seen enough from this version. So I'll be waiting to see this one climb to a full goal of insurance. We don't have that yet. Total feels a little small for 2 aggressive attacking teams. So I'll put that over 2.5 on my list, though. I'm sure Joe Dollar is just spinning around right now in his seat. So excited that I'm actually recommending some overs. That's 2 on this episode. So make sure you keep that in mind, Joe. Moving next to Roma hosting Athletic Club Bilbao in the late window on Thursday. Roma, a 1/2 goal favorite with all the juice on Athletic Club on the road. Over unders 2.25, and it's used very heavily to over. So Roma sacked their manager, brought in a very defensive one, and I'm looking forward to the under streak that Ivan Juric will drive. As that was a pretty great bet and run last season, betting unders with his former post at Torino. This is going to be a great matchup, 2 really awesome teams, and should be very competitive. Now, the big question are the injuries to Nico Williams for Athletic Club Bilbao, especially after he won the Euro this summer and was so dominant for Spain. From a Roma perspective, I think they're just trying to figure out who they are and a new manager. I think that works very well for Athletic Club. So I like that 1/2 of a goal, and I like under 2.25 away from home, as I think this is going to be a slobber knocker that doesn't end up in a ton of goal mouth action. Though there are some injuries in the Bilbao side. I think both goalkeepers, we'll see if Arizabala is available for this matchup. Moving next to Ajax hosting Besiktas. A Turkish club visits Amsterdam. Ajax, a 1/2 goal favorite with more of the juice over. There's 2.75, just slightly more to over. I lean to over in this one as well. I don't really know that I trust Besiktas. Ajax are still rebuilding, but ultimately this one, I think, has 2 teams that are going to point towards goals. So I'll lean over 2.75. That's now 3, Joe Dollar. I'm sure you're having a great old time. Moving next to Lyon, hosting Olympiacos Piraeus from Athens. Lyon, a 1/2 goal favorite with almost all the juice over. There's 2.5, juice slightly more to over. As you see, I'm wearing the first actual European soccer. I guess it's not really a tricot or a camiseta or anything like that. I think it's a practice jersey, whatever. Maybe a camiseta practicia, whatever. Lyon are. It's amazing they're in this competition considering how they were bottom of the league on table last season. Haven't been a great off to a great start this season either, and should be a favorite to Olympiacos. But Olympiacos had pretty good success in Europe last season. I think for that reason, I'm interested in the battle of Olympiacos and Olympique Lyonnais. I'll go with Olympiacos, a half a goal underdog, and I'm tempted by under 2.5 here, as I think they're going to go on the road and try to play defensively. But Lyon are just not a defensive team. They haven't played very good defense at all this season. Moving next to Sporting Braga hosting Maccabi Tel Aviv. Currently, Sporting Braga 1-goal favorite. With all the juice on the Portuguese. Over under is 2 3/4. She's very heavily to over. It seems like trips to Israel are tough for a lot of these continental sides, but the same way it goes for the other direction when the Israeli teams go and play on the road. It seems to be a big step down. It's a long trip. Not exactly next door. Somehow they're in UEFA. I don't know how, but good for them. It seems like one of those things, but I'm not trying to get political, even though soccer a lot of times, or football, it does seem to get that way. Don't really have a lean in this one. So I'll move next to FCSB, hosting Rigas Futbol Scola, I believe from Albania. FCSB, a 1-goal favorite. All the juice on Rigas away from home. Over under is 2.5, and it's juice slightly to under, or a little bit more to under. Don't really have a great understanding of these teams. I think FCSB are Romanian and have a big history, but it's been a while. So I'll move next to Eintracht Frankfurt hosting Victoria Plzen. Frankfurt are a 1.5-goal favorite with more juice on Victoria Plzen, Czech side, who are really good defensively in this competition or in your European competition last season. I want to say it was a conference league, and that's how they've gotten into this competition, but not certain on that one. But really, they had a great defensive record, were pretty dominant, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do on the road in a really tough place to play. But usually the Frankfurt club and really their fans, I think, are most difficult away from home because they travel really well. Maybe coming from the German financial capital, and they have a little bit more of that gold to spend. But I think Victoria Plzen, I'm interested in the 1.5 goals, of course, but I think I'm more interested in the under 3 in this matchup, as I think there's a good chance that they're playing a pretty defensive brand of football in this matchup, and I think it goes pretty well for the Czech side. And last but not least, we'll go Tottenham and Qarabag, who I believe are from not Armenia, but maybe Armenia. Let's see. Qarabag are from... They are from Azerbaijan. Damn, my bad. So Tottenham, one of the best teams in England, but plays a style that should work very well for them in this matchup. They're 2.25 goal favorite, which is gigantic. A little bit more juice than Qarabag. Over under is 3.5. Juice pretty heavily to over. Qarabag are going to try to be defensive and try to keep this as low scoring as possible. And I think that plays right in Tottenham's hands. I don't know that I have much of a feel for this one. 3.5 is a gigantic total in this competition, or really any sort of international competition. I don't know that I want too much to do with that, but I'm looking to bet against Tottenham as much as I possibly can over this season. We'll see. I'm not really sure when the best place to do that will be, but there's a place to do it, and I will certainly be looking out for that. So for my best bet, ultimate best bet of the show is coming up in a second, where I cut to a 1-minute reel at the @G Warner and a 1-minute YouTube short at the @G Warner on YouTube and Instagram, respectively. I'll put up the under 2.25 Athletic Club Bilbao at Roma, as I think we see a very low scoring matchup there. So before I get into the 1-minute video, thank you all for joining. I want to shout out some recent Patreon subscribers, because that is an important part for keeping this business going and keeping me, I think, alive, or maybe alive is a little bit drastic, but potentially trying to get some more content out there. Lansing, thank you for your support. Zachary Cyphers as well. Wanted to shout you guys out because it's a big deal for me, and I'm really thankful for that. Hopefully you're getting something from this podcast. Enjoy the shout out. And if you don't want me to mention your name on future ones, please let me know, and I will make sure that I don't do that. Other than that, I want to also shout out some YouTube subscribers. We're up to 147. Certainly not the 1,000 we need to start seeing ads, so you are all safe, that you won't see much for a very long time. But I want to thank the new subscribers. If I could pull that up, that'd be really, really nice. Well, it doesn't look like I'm able to do that. So let's check one more thing before I get into ultimate best bet, because it does seem like I'm stalling, but I promise I'm not. I have a way to get here. So new YouTube subscribers, here we are. Great. Got them. JC Truth and Nick Restrepo, thank you so much for your support. It's not as meaningful to me as a Patreon subscription, patreon.com/real_G Warner. Just kidding. It's actually very meaningful, and I appreciate it because the more subscribers I have, the more people are watching, and clearly the more people are interested in the NFL podcast with @A_Snicker, the eventual college basketball podcast, The Need for Seeds with that Big East Ben, of course, the soccer podcast that I do across continental competition, which Europa League for some reason usually does really well on the hit counter, and I guess there's a lot of people into that competition. Plus, the top 5 European soccer leagues every week that I do every weekend. And looking forward to doing more of that. So if you haven't left a 5-star review, huge on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, betting the pitch on those platforms at @the_G Warner on YouTube and on Instagram. So make sure you hit the follow button, subscribe, do all those sort of things. And I think before I've already missed the first few minutes of the halftime report on CNBC. It's my favorite show. Try to stay up with the market, but it's time to get into the ultimate best bet. So let's do it now. Hey, this is the @real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the ultimate best bet for the Europa League Matchday 1. We're recording this September 25th, easy for me to say. But we have a best bet from Wednesday, a best bet from Thursday, and I'll pick my favorite one for the ultimate best bet so you grade this episode. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you do it at the @real_G Warner on YouTube and on Instagram. And of course, if you're not following our podcast, Betting the Pitch on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review there. It's huge for the search rankings. Got NFL podcasts coming out, college basketball, of course, and baseball. We're going to bring that back sooner rather than later. From Wednesday, the 25th of September, I like Real Sociedad under 2 goals. And on Thursday, the 26th, I like Athletic Club Bilbao under 2.25. But for the ultimate best bet on this episode, I'm going to go with that Roma Athletic Club Bilbao under 2.25 goals, as there's a little bit more higher of a total there. And I just feel like we see a slow start under Ivan Juric, the new Roma manager. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see everyone on the next episode, which should be coming out in a couple days' time for the, the weekend soccer leagues. Thanks so much for your support, of course, and look forward to seeing you on Patreon very soon.
Recording stopped.